Work comes with its challenges, and here to discuss how to handle a toxic work environment and the people that create it is the Chief Financial Officer of Plank Ventures, Melanie Pump. Good morning. Are you into yoga?
Good morning. Not really into yoga, no.
Maybe more people could use it. Yeah, so, as restrictions lift and more people are heading back to the workplace, some are dreading it because they remember it was a toxic environment.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, the reality is there has been some protection from toxic workplaces while we've been working from home. But as we return to the workplace, we need to think again and sort of remind ourselves, how are we going to manage those situations?
And how do we manage those situations?
Yes, I mean, one of the first things I recommend is so it's not actually toxic people, it's toxic behaviors. And obviously, when people are acting toxically, it can frequently be in reaction to something that's happening in the work environment. So one of the first things I recommend is to make sure we take a look at ourselves and ensure that we're not doing something that's actually triggering some toxic behaviors. Because sometimes if we're defensive or if we're passive aggressive, that can make others react to us in negative ways. So we always want to take responsibility for our own behavior first.
And it is important not to react to that toxic behavior, right?
Exactly, yeah, because it just spreads really. Toxicity can spread through an organization. So if you react in a way that's toxic to someone else's behavior, that can actually just make the whole situation worse.
Yeah, but that's external. What about internal? How does one deal with it? Because it has a huge impact in
It really
performance.
does. And it really does. And we have a tendency, like us humans, we tend to focus on the negative. So if we could have one relationship with a peer that's negative, even though the rest of our environments and the relationships in the workplace are actually quite positive. So one of the things I recommend is really make sure that we take a step back and actually assess what the situation is and make sure we're not overly focusing on the negative. One of the things that we can do is actually even just make a list, essentially like a pros and cons, to make sure that we really do see the good. That may actually highlight to us that the situation overall is quite negative and maybe we need to change something, but you want to make sure that your brain doesn't trick you into thinking a situation is actually worse than what it is.
Yeah, now you have personal experience with this. In your rise from receptionist to CFO, you've worked in both toxic environments, but also positive environments. With the positive environments, what were they doing right? Beyond just people.
Yeah, I mean, so much of it has to do with having good supportive leaders that are really open with their employees. Like workplaces that are healthy, there tends to be high transparency and also just a lot of support in allowing people to be open about their mistakes. For example, if you're in a workplace where everybody is afraid of showing a weakness or showing a mistake, that creates a lot of insecurity that can make an environment quite toxic. So I really recommend in being open, be transparent, and be supportive of each other. And that really makes a huge difference as far as the health of the work environment.
Yeah, and take the high road and be a model of a better behavior as well.
And that is so important, especially as leaders. If you are in a leadership role in an organization, you're modeling the behavior of what's accepted in that workplace. So you want to ensure that you are not displaying any of those toxic behaviors. Positivity spreads in a workplace just like toxicity does. So we want to take responsibility for our own behaviors.
Yeah, for those that are dealing with it, what do you recommend? Like, should they speak to that person or leave it to HR?
Yes, and that really depends on the extent of the behavior. If somebody's actually bullying or harassing you in the workplace, that's definitely something where you want to raise that up to HR or to another leader. But if it's more a scenario where someone is defensive or they're passive aggressive or you just find that the way that you're communicating with them isn't healthy, then I definitely recommend sitting down with them and saying that you value the relationship, but you find that it's not as productive as it could be, and what can you work on? How can you work on that together to make the relationship healthier? So yeah, I give people the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes they don't realize the way that their behavior is actually impacting you or the work environment.
Yeah, well, employers have a vested interest in this because it impacts turnover with employees for sure. I mean, we don't have any problems here. We're like one big happy margarine commercial. But I know there's people that deal.
Definitely, and even right now with the return to work, if you have a work environment that is unhealthy, that's going to make people really reluctant to come back to the office.
Absolutely.
So you want to ensure that environment's healthy. That's going to
Hey,
make
we got to scoot, Melanie, but we're going to link up your website for more information, more great tips. And thank you so much for joining us, Melanie Pump from Plank Ventures.
Thanks for having me.